Almost 9 million people live across the 5 boroughs that make up this city, and they have to contend with all kinds of weather conditions, from snow and heat waves to tornadoes. This city has it all. But as well as being one of the most unpredictable cities to live in, it is now, at least in part because of its recent history, one of the better prepared when it comes to dealing with disasters. And it's down to the New York Office of Emergency Management to coordinate the city's response to all emergencies.
Well, we have a heat plan in New York. If we have extreme weather, we would activate a steering committee of agencies. On the human side of it, if we have very high temperatures, we'll put out information to the public, telling them what they should do or not do. People who are children and the elderly are advised to stay in on certain days. The heat is just too great. If they're in and their air conditioning is not working or it's too hot, we open up cooling centers. But much of it is information. A good deal of it is ensuring that people have somewhere to go if they're under pressure.
It's a worrying fact that the more sophisticated our cities become, the more we rely on their infrastructure. These are no longer places of simple needs. The modern city has numerous interconnected systems that simply have to work for us to survive. If any part of that system fails, the city and our lives will grind to a halt. We just have to look at the devastating consequences of the 2003 European heatwave, where 56,000 people, many of them elderly, died in France simply because the country was not used to dealing with such extreme temperatures in summer. Here in the UK, we are looking at higher temperatures and heavier rainfall. Our time of temperate climate may well be coming to an end. We live in a world where our services, created in more moderate times, are having to deal with the weather as it becomes more and more variable, and its impact on our lives is greater than ever before. 100 years ago, temperatures on London's Bakerloo line were recorded at 14 Celsius. By 2007, that was closer to 30 Celsius. As the city develops, so does its needs. More people means a greater demand for carriages. More carriages with more people in them mean a hotter network. In fact, the increase in temperature on the London Underground has little to do with climate change itself, but when it gets hot outside, it quickly makes the system, already overheating, almost unbearable.
We've worked very closely with railways like New York to learn the lessons. They've had an air-conditioned railway for a while. One of the big problems you get with new air-conditioned trains is you dump a lot of the heat into the tunnels, and if you've been to New York, you'll notice that the trains are lovely and cool, but the stations are very hot. So we've learned from that, and we've made sure that we've put adequate ventilation in to our stations. But we are noticing a trend where the extremes of weather are becoming slightly more frequent now. So the temperatures when it does get hot are slightly higher, and the storms when they come are slightly more intense.
But the Tube is not the only service that must adapt to the new world reality. The government is constantly having to re-evaluate its policy on climate change, while local councils up and down the country will each have to decide how to face the challenge of the coming decades.
Well, local authorities and councils are coming under pressure. They need to do more for the environment, and actually Leeds City Council are unveiling a new strategy in the next few weeks, and they're looking at a number of areas. For example, the current road surfaces are made of an ingredient that could rupture and melt given the temperatures we're expecting in 2050. So they're looking at new ingredients to resurface the roads. And in the parks and countryside, they're already planting different species of trees because, for example, the beech tree is shallow-rooted and it can't cope with the type of climate we expect in 2050.
Without proper information and planning, cities will fail to keep their essential services running in the face of increasing extremes of weather. Katrina is a case in point, where the experience gained has been applied back into the system. As the reality of climate change sinks in, it's clear we must adopt strategies that develop and deploy over decades rather than years. Only then can we begin to get to grips with the situation and ensure that our cities can cope with increasingly extreme weather and allow its citizens to go about their daily lives.
We're looking at a very different climate by 2050. Winters will be milder and wetter, summers will be drier and hotter, and the city's utilities are coming under increasing pressure to come up with a strategy to deal with such a different climate. And if they don't, well, in fact, they risk the safety of the people who live in these towns and cities. Really, we're going to have to move with the times, and we're going to have to move very quickly.